All right, so I think that takes us to the direct benefits of PNSB or ProBio specifically to our reef tanks. So, Ken, what would you say is a number one benefit? And if you had to choose a number one benefit, what would it be to our reef tanks?
Nutrition.
Nutrition. I feel like that's a big one because there's a lot of things out there right now, be it dry, frozen, bottled. Why would you say? I guess nutrition is the one that it's for PNSB specifically. Why would you say it's nutrition? If you don't mind me asking.
Um, well, first of all, it's a preferred natural food of corals. Corals feed on bacteria primarily in the first place, but these are one of the bacteria that they select for. We mentioned that it's high in protein. It has a lot of these carotenoids that are people think about, coloration or whatever, but carotenoids are more important for a lot of other things. When metabolism of a lot of animals, not just corals, but the amino acids and the B vitamins in particular. So,
Awesome.
and it's a food that cleans up after itself.
No,
uh,
and that's one of the things I probably like most about your product. It's the profile that it hits my tank with. I don't think it's polluting my water, and maybe
yeah.
that's something that it should be. I don't know, spoken a little bit more about. I guess the yellow snow, does that pollute? I don't want to say pollute because pollute's probably not the right word,
Oh,
but that's actually
sure.
one of the questions somebody else asks because they're asking the ratio of nitrogen and phosphorus in
Mm.
PNS, but I feel like I have to ask that about yellow snow as well. Um,
Yeah. Yellowstone's going to be a little bit higher, um, just a little bit,
okay.
but it never, I mean, at that low dose, it's more of a supplement. So you don't feed really. You can, but you don't generally like at the regular daily dose,
Hmm.
recommended dose. We've never seen, and my tanks, like, we don't have filters even. Like, these are literally not even a sump, they're just pumps.
Oh,
I've
wow.
run tanks like that, that
Yeah.
weird. Yeah. So I had a 10-gallon tank with a dendronepthy in it for 5 months
Wow.
without any filter. We would just pound that tank with food, including yellow snow. But I think because of the PNSB, they clean up all the nutrients and then grow. They turn it into biomass that the coral ate. So
That's pretty
uh,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, same thing like
So
with Phyto too. The Phyto, as long as it's alive, lights are on, it's taking up ammonia out of the water, nitrate, phosphate.
yeah.
So it gets eaten. Live foods in general are just a lot less polluting.
So obviously nutrition for corals is probably the best way you're trying to market your product and that's what you're selling it as. But there's also I feel like there's the side
Let me
benefit
just
of
so not
okay,
just
yeah.
yes for corals, but all the way down the line. So copepods eat this stuff. And I would stress that again. That's my primary. I wanted this. The whole point of this initially was to feed copepods, right? To make the Tigriopus like bright red and to to clean up their water, but make them grow fast. So even if you have a mandarin, right? Like
Hmm.
these things definitely, and I know that firsthand from a few different instances, different systems, our test systems. This stuff grows copepods like crazy. So it's like an ecosystem wide benefit. So if you're increasing your copepod production, you're boosting your little gobies, a lot of your anthias too. So almost everything ultimately consumes these bacteria and their carotenoids, and so on down the food chain.
That's amazing. And I think that I mentioned this to you last time we were talking. I've never seen the microphone on my tank explode more than when I
Oh, right.
use yeah, it's
That's
it's it's kind of
common.
funny to see. So
You
is that
know,
something that's common in general, like across the board, would you say?
yeah, yeah, and it makes me wish. So back in the day, like we used to get like the craziest live rock, people
Yeah, I
talk about that
remember.
all the
Yeah.
time now. Some people haven't even never even got to see that.
Yeah.
Like even from the Caribbean, so that was some of the best rock. It was amazing, but it was just full of filter feeders.
Yeah.
So many reef aquarists don't even know what the hell a foraminiferant is. What's a foram?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but the old rock used to have these cool lacy ones. and stuff like that. Even like oysters and things like that
Hmm.
on them.
There's a
And
bunch of people in here that literally have all those sorts of hookups, and they get live rock, and they're all about live rock tanks because it makes that big of a difference.
yeah,
So
well, back
yeah.
in the day, all that stuff would die because we didn't have anything to feed it. But my
Mhm.
thought, from what people tell me all the time, there's something like my tube worms, my sponges, all these things that, just grow like crazy. I'm like, shit, I wish back in the day we'd have used something like this. And I wonder, sensitive like tunicates and things like that on the live rock would have done better.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crazy stuff right now still going on, and I feel like people out of Florida are still getting like little things here and there because there's a bunch of places out of Florida that are collecting. They
Mhm.
have those permits, and they're still getting stuff. It's really interesting to see.
Yeah.
Um, there's
Hopefully it
people
looks like
asking
real
about your
stuff.
deep water. So I'm going to ask this question real quick because it's actually pretty interesting. I know you wrote the book literally on cold water or deep water coral or cold water, but like, do you think it might be the key to keeping deep water corals in in a aquarium aquaria by any chance?
Um, I couldn't say for sure, but I would not be surprised.
Okay.
For one thing, these bacteria have been isolated from deep sea sediments, but they're ubiquitous on Earth. Forest soils, the human belly button. I mean, they've been isolated from everything and everywhere. Yeah, but just not in huge quantities. And that's a really interesting point to bring up about like any kind of any kind of aquarium. They're sometimes really abundant on reefs, but
That's awesome. Yeah.
well, they're typically very abundant on reefs, like way up there in terms of like just abundance,
Mhm.
but compared to other bacterial groups. And for whatever weird reason, they don't persist well in aquariums. So even if you get live rock or natural live sand, you may not necessarily be introducing these bacteria, and that's the value of getting it in the bottle. There's something about when they're transported that kills them off, or more likely, it seems like aquarium conditions. I don't know if it's skimming or just
Mm.
the higher organic, different bacteria are favored, right?
There's a lot of factors. Yeah, I was going to say there
Yeah.
could be so many. Yeah.
The thing is, these bacteria would survive in freaking anything. If you have an aptasia that, you know what I mean? If you have an aptasia that survives in your tank, these bacteria
Mm.
certainly can survive. That isn't why they die
Yeah.
off. They die off because of competition with other microbes. So anyway, by adding these products, it's kind of like a reset. Like by reintroducing them, you're rebalancing your microbiome, making it more like if that's your aim, making because they are found in natural environments. So,
I
um,
think that's really interesting because I mean I know the couple of us in here have gone down the road of the fluconazole, and that's one of those can of worms that I do not want to open because once you get into that conversation, it's there's a lot of I feel like opinion that and we both felt or a couple people of us felt that it affected our microfauna so much to the point that we needed to reset, and that's why we kind of gravitated towards your product. And
mhm.
your product kind of I felt like it resetted me. But it's actually interesting that you mentioned that. So like another question that just popped up. Do you have a certain opinion on temperatures for reef tanks slash keeping PNSB?
Hmm. So these are thermobacteria. They like really warm conditions. Like their shelf life, you could keep them like at 112, 114 degrees
Jeez,
indefinitely.
all right. Wow. All right.
They love it warm, but they don't like it cold. So, like for example, I have an interest in cold water aquariums, and right away I was like kind of disappointed. I could write these off for that. I'll take it. Not necessarily as food because they do get upwelled and moved around, and I've seen papers where corals in those types of environments will eat this stuff. To go back a few steps and answer that question, but they don't. But these bacteria don't grow there because they stop growing once you go down into like the 60s Fahrenheit. So not very
Okay.
cool at all. They stop growing. It's 75 even. They start to drop off. So they
I know.
do love the tropical temperatures of a typical reef aquarium.
That is great to know. I mean, so what's the best way to like kind of keep ProBio in a reef tank? Is there a way to keep it thriving in a certain way aside from just dosing?
Yeah. So one, what usually people will do, you can just dose it into the tank. The first dose is often the most important one because the the hope is always to seed the tank, right? A lot of people are like, I don't want to keep spending money forever and ever. I want this stuff to grow in the tank, which is totally understandable, and we go all kinds of lengths to help people do that. Sometimes even tailored to their particular tank and budget and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
um, what we recommend, especially with substrate sauce, is to literally just pour it on a substrate, like a marine pure block or I've seen studies where biochar seems to work really well. Just like in the aquarium world, that would be like aquachar, if you're familiar with that product.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
think he might have asked a question. I might have missed it, believe it or not.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, aquachar is an excellent product to use to inoculate these guys because it not only has maybe even compared to just ordinary carbon, it has an internal structure that favors the growth of these guys and maybe other anaerobic bacteria. But I've seen specific studies where this type of bacteria really grows well on biochar, even compared in that case, it was compared to sintered glass. It was
Hmm.
Biomax, or it would be some from Hagen, or something like, I think Siperac would be a sintered glass medium, right? So slightly better on biochar. So I would recommend aquachar as a biomedium.
Okay.
Uh, a lot of people just like soak it in a sponge, like a filter
Mhm.
sponge, loose, and
Yeah.
then just throw it in the sump. So it's not like the old school denitrification filters that were really complicated and weird, and you had to feed them.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they had to have just the right amount of water flow. Like these are really, but if you inundate the medium, in other words, and they can fight off other bacteria. Again, competition with other bacteria is really important. That's the only thing that's going to knock guys out are other bacteria. So if you get them in a large group together, they can fight. For example, by quorum sensing, it's basically where they talk to each other. They communicate with each other when they're a certain density. They say, "Hey,
That's
we have
amazing. Yeah.
enough of us to make it worth secreting antibiotics." So we're going to do that and fight off other bacteria and create what's called a zone of inhibition. And then that way these guys can grow and they spread. So we try to get that, going on like a, uh, marine pure or whatever biomedium you might use. After the first dose, then yes, you could just add it right into the tank. Some people turn off their skimmer, some don't, depending on how often they run their skimmer. We recommend, but we understand that that's just disruptive or inconvenient. If you run your skimmer, just know that you might have product because you're actually removing, just like you would any of your fish foods, your
Yeah.
reef roids, whatever, you're removing that stuff when you run the skimmer. Same here. So after that, yeah, just add it either to the water or to your food because this is a probiotic. That's how it was most widely used in the world for decades. It
Hmm.
was actually put in the food for shrimp and fish, and it would start consuming all those waste products before they were even excreted. And then the pellet continues to, the bacteria that are in the pellet, in the poop on the bottom or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
So,
So,
so from what I understand, it sounds like this could be almost used as a quick jump start if you use a mixture of substrate sauce, some sort of biomedia. Almost like this sounds like it's a great way to kind of run a quarantine tank. Is that a good assumption to make or now?
yeah, and especially to maintain one, so where you have these ups and downs.
Yeah.
Um, so where you're changing the bioload radically like that over time, uh, these bacteria are again a nice complement to your traditional biofilter with the aerobic nitrifying bacteria, which reliant on inorganic carbon and all that. These guys are so much more adaptable that they continue to live in any kind of environment, including that fish. And all of a sudden, the bioload goes way up. Nitrifying bacteria, as a lot of us know, are not known for their fast reproduction, right? But these bacteria have a doubling time of like 12 hours under ideal conditions, so they adapt more quickly, and they do nitrify, so they can, and they assimilate ammonia because in their rapid growth. So anyway, they make it a little bit safer. So if you have a nitrogen, like an ammonia spike or a nitrite spike, these bacteria will consume that, or help they'll help the nitrifying bacteria consume that. And I mean, if it's in a quarantine tank, hey, you get the additional probiotic effects, right?
So,
These bacteria fight Vibrio. It's proved they are proven over and over again to inhibit Vibrio, fish, certain fish diseases.
wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. So it's almost like you want to run, and maybe I'm extrapolating here, but would you run this media, like let's say Aquatar, right? Like that sounds like it's something that you could run easily in a little small media reactor. You could
yeah,
plug it onto like a small 20-gallon system, run it as a quarantine system, but you would dose or pre-soak that media, whatever media it is, be it Aquatar or whatever, in substrate sauce, or would it be ProBio? So it sounds like maybe it would be substrate
If you
sauce
had time
first.
to cycle, if you had time to do the full cycle, I would do sub sauce, but you may not want all of the phosphorus in there,
Yeah.
especially if it was, say, it's like a coral quarantine, and it will necessarily be illuminated, and you have like, all that phosphorus in there, then you're going to have algae and that grow on.
Yes.
So anyway,
Totally.
in that case, ProBio would be better. Just know that if you use ProBio, remember ProBio is fresh or salt.
Yes.
Well, whenever you add a freshwater culture to a marine system or vice versa, that extends the lag period. And the lag period is just the amount of time that they get used to their new environment before they start reproducing. They may even change genetically, but it takes about 3 extra days, 4 extra days. So if you use ProBio, you might want to, you might want to do that in anticipation of adding fish, so that these bacteria have time to. That's not as big of a deal in an established tank, right?
Yeah.
That's
No,
you're
this is just me
for
just thinking
food.
of potential uses for the product,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So
Sorry. Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
going to do that, if you have to like rush the fish in, substrate sauce would be a better one because that's already adapted to salt water and it starts working pretty much immediately.
And this is again me extrapolating. And I keep just asking questions that they keep popping in my head.
Mhm.
But do you think this would be a comparable product to a Dr. Tim's quick cycle type of situation or no?
Um, I don't know what's in that product.
Fair.
If anyone does, but Quick Cycle sounds like Nitrosomonas, Nitrobacter, stuff like that. If so, it's similar in that these bacteria do perform nitrification, though at like 1/15th the rate, I think,
Okay.
of those bacteria. So not as good at anything aerobic, really. But it will enhance their performance. It will help them. It will. So these guys aren't good or they're not good nitrifiers, but they do remove ammonia and nitrite and
The
nitrate rather
process.
quickly as they grow because they assimilate, right?
That's good to
So
know.
yeah.
So I'll get into the other questions. These are questions that I keep asking. But
Uh-huh.
coincidentally, the next question from the audience is the next one that I found was mine. So I'm going to ask my question, then I'll get into the other ones. So in terms of quality control, that's actually something that's very important to me for my reef tank, and I feel like it's something important for a lot of people here too.
Yeah.
That's something that's how do you ensure quality control across multiple batches? Like I mentioned earlier, there was a big shift in smell from one batch of yellow snow to another, and this is just my
Yeah.
experience, which is
Well,
very
no,
could be
the
mine.
only
Yeah.
thing there is the one real big ingredient in yellow snow is the crab meal, and that actually varies a little bit from batch to. The first thing I noticed was a difference in color. So, because
Huh.
like I always thought like, why is it? It's usually white, and then I'd get these dark batches, and I'm like, that's weird. Why is it? Because like that particular product, like everything is done the exact same way every time, like to the T. I'm like, where is this coming from? Well, one time I was going from one bag of crab meal to another, and the second one was like kind of dark, right? And that was what caught my attention. So it could be the composition of the so it might have, I don't know, there's something difference in the crab meal, but essentially it should be the same because um, so the gas isn't allowed. I'm not really. I actually haven't noticed a lot of variation, so that's good to know and to hear. But
Mhm.
um,
But
essentially, they should be the
is there
same.
anything that you do before, like sending a batch out, for example? Is there anything that you can do beforehand to ensure that it's consistent going forward? And this is just my question because it's
Oh,
something
right.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing we do is we test. No, it's not a huge battery of tests or anything. I mean,
Mhm.
nobody out there is going to send like ICP tests for every
Yeah.
10 bottles. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
but the basics. Like what I'll do is I'll dose. I have a 1 gallon um, uh, uh, jug or whatever,
Mhm.
and we'll test. We'll do like the one. What is yellow snow? One in one. Well, it's 1 milliliter per gallon. So I'll put one
Yeah.
mil in that jug, and then we test nitrate, and we test and ammonia is the big one. That we never get any ammonia, and actually it's the same with substrate sauce and ProBio. So never any ammonia in those, and we get a consistent. We purposefully put an excess of phosphorus in substrate sauce, of course, but then we check to make sure that that's a consistently, um, it's of a consistent excess, if that makes sense.
I mean, it kind of does, but like it was pre-planned. So somebody else asked, this is Preox. He was asking what the ratio was between nitrogen and phosphorus in the PNS. Is there, yeah.
So the bacteria itself, they actually have a very similar Redfield ratio to algae. So yeah, like 16:1, you know.
Okay. So it's pretty stable enough that you're, if you add it to your tank, you shouldn't be overly worried. So I think that we're trying to
No, you won't really. So the product itself, like, I mean, unless you're really dosing it, you're not really going to cause like, and you're not going to add a lot either way, right? Just using it as a food, especially considering that so little of it goes to waste. Any imbalances just might, if they occur at all, and we've never seen any evidence that they do, but hypothetically, uh, what could occur? So maybe you could run low on nitrogen because these guys are also denitrifiers, right? So they're just converting a lot of the bioavailable nitrogen in your system to nitrogen gas, and that just disappears, which
Yeah.
most of us want. But if we're talking Redfield ratios, you might go relatively low on nitrogen.
Especially if you're
Another,
running ultra low nutrients. I feel like anybody running an UNLS, whatever, ultra low nutrient system. I feel like
yeah.
that's a big factor for them, and I feel like I might be in that boat too, so that's why it matters to me.
Oh, especially, yeah, if you're already like hitting like, the 0.02
Yeah.
parts and on phosphorus and all that. But so the thing with that is, so these guys, so just a real quick interesting thing about Rhodopseudomonas anyway. I think both species can do it, but I know Rhodopseudomonas is a polyphosphate accumulator. What that is basically especially like in a coral reef where phosphorus is typically not available, though it is of course essential for their growth.
Mhm.
They will accumulate it, and what they do is they make polyphosphate granules that they deposit intracellularly inside of their cell, right,
Wow.
for later use. It's kind of the equivalent of like making fat or something like that for later use, right? So what's interesting about that is that in a most people's reef tanks, frankly, they will start to accumulate polyphosphates. So yeah, we might add like vinegar or something like that to encourage heterotrophic bacteria to grow and support it in the skimmer, all that, blah blah blah. These guys do that too. However, they actually remove more phosphorus because they're also storing this polyphosphate.
Wow.
Sometimes up to, believe it or not, 15% of their dry weight, which is a ridiculous amount of phosphorus. Most organisms just they need it, but they need to store a crazy amount of polyphosphate.
Wow.
So anyway, theoretically, they could actually, really growing and they're really grabbing the phosphate, they could maybe, change the balance that way. These are hypotheticals, and in most cases, I think we would welcome a sharp reduction in phosphate anyway, right?
No, I mean, I feel like most people would. I know I would. My phosphate's a little high right now, but that's not a conversation for this conversation.
To
So,
follow up on that,
no,
hang
yeah,
on one
go ahead.
sec.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, to follow up on that, if the phosphate is all sequestered inside the PNS as polyphosphates, what happens when the bacteria dies? Where
Oh,
does the phosphate go?
yeah, then it's recycled in the tank, of course. Yeah. So the only way to get rid, so that only works as a source of export, like if say you're skimming and you're removing them that way. Because even if corals are eating them and they're eating the phosphate, they'll have phosphate rich waste, right? Because the corals won't take up more than they need, or whatever eats the PNSB. But you will remove a disproportionate amount of phosphorus through means like protein skimming or water changes when they accumulate phosphate in that way.
When you say remove, it's not killing the bacteria. It's just removing it wholeheartedly from the water column, correct?
Yeah. So we're talking. Yeah. So if you're just exporting it through like water changes, protein skimming.
No, that was one of the questions that just popped up, which is why I was asking. Like, it doesn't necessarily kill it. It's just being removed, but that's along with a bunch of organics.
Yeah. So UV sterilizers, for example, you run it through, obviously then it's just the cell will die and lyse and release all its contents into the water, including that, and it'll be taken up by other bacteria and solubilized in phosphate again. Some of it will be recycled, some of it will be exported.
Gotcha. So another question that quickly popped up, this is Crumb, they keep jellyfish. So they're asking, would any of these products be useful for keeping jellyfish, specifically moon jellies?
So my experience keeping moon jellies, they're really sensitive to water quality. So I don't think that the jellies themselves would eat this bacteria, but the bacteria might help in terms of maintaining water quality, which is so important because, so from my experience raising jellies, like you had to change the water so often, and they don't like huge water changes. So you have to do lots and lots of tiny ones. You remove a whole once, they do weird things like lay on the bottom, and the viewer may have had those same experiences. But anyway, if you can extend the need for water changes, that would, that's huge. And there's a lot of waste in jellyfish tanks as it is. So these guys would consume the organics. And one thing I don't know about, is I don't know a lot, if they're susceptible to Vibrio, any kind of vibriosis, these bacteria might help stave that off as well. So potentially, but I don't have I've never seen anything in the literature there. So they would be pioneers in that application if they wanted to try it and go for it.
Good to know. So I don't want to keep anybody too long. We're going on almost 2 hours at this point, so I apologize for keeping everybody long. So one person did ask, and this is Kian, can you overdose PNSB? And can you cause some sort of bacterial bloom?
Not that I've ever seen, and I grossly overdose on a regular basis on a tank that has no filter whatsoever.
I've seen that video specifically you're talking about, and it's pretty cool. the non-photosynthetic tank, it's pretty amazing. I highly recommend it. You said it was Mile High Reef. I looked at it the other day. Pretty awesome stuff. I'm gonna merge these two questions together. So people are asking about how you can potentially culture this from your house. A lot of people here probably they culture their own phyto or their zooplankton or something like that. Is this something that a regular home aquarist can kind of culture on their own? And if they can, how would they go about that? And maybe if you want to give us a little tour like on how you keep yours, that'd be cool.
Sure. So well, here's how we do it. These cubitainers, they call them. They're transparent 20-liter collapsible polyethylene cubes, basically, and we hot fill them with the medium. You have to let it cool, of course, before you inoculate them, but it's one of those, where you have to be really careful about how you transfer things, because the risk of just anything floating in the air, even. So it's got to be, everything, our hands, everything covered with rubbing alcohol.
Okay.
So these are bleached beforehand and then thiosulfated and hot filled with the medium, whatever that is, the water milfoil tea, the herbal thing, or in these cases, like this is the mineral, the minerals medium. But in any case, for PNSB, they grow about twice as fast in light. So that's why we use the clear containers and illuminate them like. That takes about 3 weeks typically for them to completely grow out. The colors become pretty evident. Way this, the Rhodopseudomonas is sort of orangish.
Okay.
I don't know how well you can see it here, and then
we can see a difference.
Yeah, more purpley.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can see it's like a hot purple though. They're really pretty. And then this is a newer one, Rhodo. It's not in a product we sell yet, but the bacterial chlorophyll A is more greenish, and then as it matures, it gets to a mahogany.
Oh, that's cool. All right.
Yeah, kind of like actually, I guess it's this one right here. But that's how we know they're done. I guess these are all cleaned out well. So the biofilm, that's how they get the name, the purple non-sulfur, right? Is the suspension is kind of orangish or reddish, but the biofilm is more purpley. So you can kind of, if I can see in this one, where it can get like blood red, like I don't know if you see that or not, but
it's deep.
Blood red, as compared to this clear one, so that's how we know they grow. Like, to answer your control, like we know that they're in there because the carotenoids make that pretty evident, right? And then we know that the stuff we're selling is viable because we use product to make product. So basically, we use ProBio from former lots that have already been tested and everything, but that's just an extra assurance of quality. If we use that again to brew a new batch, and that new batch, all those new batches consistently perform the same way. It takes about 8 days until you start seeing the biofilm, and so basically that's about it. That they have to be anaerobic. They grow a lot faster that way. If they're on light, about twice as. With an appropriate organic source. So they grow on a lot of different things. I would let anyone who wanted to try growing something like this just go online and get some of the recipes, believe it or not. So if you go into any of the peer-reviewed published material, they almost always tell you how they grew the bacteria. Right?
No,
so you look up you look up Rhodopseudomonas palustris and culture medium, and then you'll get like, and then you're sitting at eBay for hours ordering all these weird exotic, where am I going to get malate?
The secret ingredients of the secret sauce, so to speak, right?
Right.
Gotcha.
So
no, that's pretty interesting.
We don't tell people exactly. One thing I'd like to know though from the audience is if they would be interested if we ever put out basically a cube, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be the 5-gallon, but there are smaller ones available, like a 1-gallon cube, but with the ingredients in them. So you basically just add boiling water, let that cool, and then add a smaller amount of inoculant. Or someone who wanted to just keep cultures going, right? Because basically at that point, all you need is the biosecurity is the most important thing, really.
And the thing is, all you would really need, you said, is light, and I'm assuming clean water and some sort of sterile container.
Definitely has to be sterile, or else you can get all kinds of weird things. So, but it's all, it's all boiled. Even your tap water, types of bacteria that thrive in faucets that can contaminate these types of cultures. So
somebody in our voice chat in our in the mod channel is asking about cysts, and he was looking at rhodospirillum specifically, and he was asking about a dry product in the future potentially.
Yeah,
and that
was a
kind of
great
matters.
question. I love that when I saw that. I forgot about Sentinel. So Sentinel is it's a weird one, right? So we use that genus in substrate sauce. That's Rhodospirillum. That's the corkscrew shaped one. That's hot purple. But that one, so most PNSB are not spore forming bacteria. They can't be dried. Like if you see a dried product for your aquarium, it is probably Bacillus or something like that. That a lot of gram-positive bacteria that are spore forming anyway. These guys can't survive desiccation. If it's dry, it doesn't have PNSB in it. I haven't seen Sentinum used in any aquacultural products. And I've actually looked for it because I'm like, I want to play with that stuff because it supposedly can be dried out. I don't know if it's a endospore or an actual cyst, if it can actually encyst. But yeah, that was a great question. Right now, though, I do not know of any, I don't know of any even agricultural products or anybody that's ever offered PNS bacterial product that was dry. They're always
we actually just launched a quick poll, by the way, to see. We still have 25 people in here, well, 23, including us two, to see how that would kind of pan out. So everybody who's in the voice channel, if you head over to the questions for AMA, Cindy just posted a straw poll. So we can kind of see like what the turnout would be. I know I 100% would be a part. I think that's something that I would love to get. I feel like that would make my tank husbandry just a little bit better, just because I would have a consistent, batch of something I can dose. No, I feel like everybody here is going to be very interested in something like that. So the drives out the question.
We had a customer out east in New Jersey that has a 600-gallon tank or something. I think it's a 600-gallon tank, and he would actually buy it by the cube like this, and wanted to grow it himself, and we kind of helped him along. I don't give right, but right, I can't be that forthright, but I helped him along, and he successfully grew some really beautiful cultures. So it can be done, and this is like, I don't know, like his prior interest in this sort of stuff beforehand, but he really got into it. Like when you actually see, this is a cool bacteria because you see them grow. You can actually see these super bright carotenoids. They're even brighter in person than they are in the camera here. The red and purple, and anyway, I think for people that grow them at home in the bright light and see that, it's kind of satisfying. It's like for people, I think you were growing the Nanochloropsis and stuff like that. It just becomes part of your routine. And
yeah,
so far, I mean, not a lot of people have done that. Most of the people that we sell to just try to get it established in their tank and hope that it keeps reseeding. But
I was gonna say a lot of us here.
I'd like to see
how So right now, I just got the message that it is overwhelmingly positive. We have a 90% yes. So out of the 25, I mean, that's pretty good numbers right there, I feel. So in terms of being, I feel like a very streamlined food for our corals. How might corals consume ProBio versus yellow snow? And I think I feel like obviously it's a very complementary product, but can you just choose one and kind of push that forward without having to do both?
I mean, you could use neither. Right? Because
technically, yeah.
Every tank has different needs because we have a different tank to start with. We have different corals, and then we're already feeding different foods. So that's hard to say because I wouldn't know what was missing or in excess in that equation. All I would say is that these two foods are very different nutritionally, and in fact, yellow snow came after ProBio in large part just to complement it with respect to particle size, vitamin content, all that stuff. So what one has, the other doesn't have, right? So they're basically to be used together. So if you already are feeding vitamin B rich, for example, then yeah, I would probably prefer ProBio. If you already if you're core, if, you know, if for, I don't know how anyone would know this right now, but if you have like a vitamin B or something like that, or if some of the ones that like bigger particles aren't getting their fair share of food, then maybe
Okay.
yellow snow would be better.
And,
But
and
you
the
know,
thing
like
is, I know you have that
they're meant,
non-photosynthetic tank, so it's almost like
yeah.
I've seen that video, and it's kind of astounding that you keep that tube anemone in there and still going and growing, and it's amazing to me.
Hardly feeding anything. That's what's so weird. I also have that dendrophilia in there,
Mm,
and people have said you got to feed those every day. Man, I can't remember the last time I fed that thing. Like
That's
I,
amazing.
I'm a bad coral dad, I guess. Like my test tanks are seriously. I'm like if it passes through my hands, like because I'm the worst aquarist ever when it comes down to it. So so if I mean if anything can survive, probably do well feeding on this stuff in their own if they add the same amount.
So I can appreciate that though. I feel like that's a good. I feel like a bookend to the conversation. I've found my tank to kind of like pop off, and I say that in a weird way, but it's true. Like my tank has jumped off the rails, and everything, the color, everything in general has just exploded in growth, color, and I just literally posted something today talking about polyp extension, and this is. I feel like it's a direct, I guess, correlation between when I started dosing and now that I see the tank. So I'm happy that you're here, and I think everybody here. I think one person said to tell you one that they love you, and they asked if you were single. I'm not. I know you're married, but
Sorry.
but it's one of those things. I feel like everybody here is just happy to have you in the conversation, and just happy that you're here for this in the server. And feel like if anybody is very curious, I feel like it's Hydrospace.store. Am I right? I'm not sure if I'm right with
That's
that.
right.
And
Yeah.
I have the links kind of I have them here, so I'll make sure to get those out to everybody else. And you don't sell substrate sauce in your on your site. You sell that through only Algae Barn and other distributors, correct?
LG Barn in any store. Some of the stores do sell that online, actually, so
Oh, okay.
they can get it on. We actually, and for I don't think you have any Asian, um, any people from East Asia in the audience, but we do have a distributor in Singapore, so we're moving through there. We've had,
I think I've seen them on Instagram, believe it or not.
yeah,
Yeah.
India, Puerto Rico, so kind of moving around. The UK. We're trying to get into the EU. I've realized now that there are issues. You can't get into it's not easy to get into the UK necessarily
Fair
now
enough.
since Brexit. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, right now, LG Barn is great. I mean, because they're awesome. They have a really awesome shipping team. The prices are the same there as they would be on my site. So they have the lowest prices, a great shipping team, and you can get all kinds of awesome products from them as well. You can get your side of pods and Fido from LG Barnes, so
Yeah.
that's a good
Good way to
place.
see your tank.
Yeah, and then if your LFS doesn't carry any of these products, encourage them to do so and tell them to get it from Aquarium Science. Aquarium. I was in the Aquarium Science program years ago. Aquarium Supply Distribution, ASD. They're also located in here in Colorado, but they distribute all the way across the United States, and great guys to work with as well. So
Awesome.
I think that's just
And
aquariumsupplydistribution.com.
I wrote that in the chat just so I could save it for future reference. And this is my question. Are there any interesting, fun products coming on the horizon from your company? Because I feel like you mentioned that Fido was a big component to, and obviously ProBio. Is this something that's in the works for you guys? What's going on? Like, I want to know what's in the future for you in general.
Not so much phytoplankton. So a lot of people have that angle. Algae Barn's doing it quite well.
Yes, there. Yeah.
I put a plug in there for Ocean Magic. Actually, I would say they have a product. They have a combo, and that's an Algae Barn product specifically. But they have a combo called the Ultimate Eco Pack,
Mhm.
And it's both PNS products, the combo, the PNS ProBio and Yellow Snow with Ocean Magic, their multi-species phytoplankton blend,
Okay.
and also EcoPods, which is 4 species, very different species of copepod. So it basically forms the entire base of the food chain. So that's a good one right there. So anyway, yeah, for phytoplankton, I think everybody's kind of got that base covered. We're just going to move forward with bacteria and probably sticking to purple bacteria. So you saw the Rotobacter.
Mhm.
That is actually going to be a freshwater product. And again, we've been on 2 hours, not to I'll just say that'll be more of an agricultural product. So it'll be more for like farms and stuff, geared towards like shrimp farmers and aquaponics, especially cannabis. Boy, if we'd have touched on that one earlier. But,
No, yeah, I should have brought it up earlier.
cannabis is a huge. These bacteria are actually getting huge as well, mixed with a couple other bacteria and yeast, believe it or not. So that one with Rotobacter, that is probably going to be like in a gallon size and distributed that way. And then I don't know, maybe in the future we'll do something with the dry, like if we just have like a small amount of inoculant and people, if that's worth a new SKU.
You know what? I would tell you right now that I would buy it. And out of the poll that we did, I think it was, what was the number? It was 15 votes yes, 2 votes no, but those 2 people aren't that fun. So you know what? That was when we first kind of launched the poll, so it probably went up a little bit. And you know what? I really do I want to say thank you again on behalf of the server, and thank everybody for joining. Congratulations to the 4 winners that we had, and I'm looking forward to keep using this product for myself. So thank you again. And I'm looking forward to the dry product too. So whenever that comes out, please let me know.
We're working on it starting now. So
Awesome.
thank you very much. And for everybody that stuck around so long tonight, I'm the gratitude is mine.